Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Centre Circle podcast where me and Sam are joined by blues legend Paul Devlin. How are you, Paul?
I'm good, lad, thanks.
All good, all good. We're normally joined by a couple of other guys, Dale and Drew, a Birmingham Wolves fan, but I reckon they've been listening to Crouch's podcast and they've heard them say that Paul Devlin's a nutter and they've thought, no thanks.
Probably true.
Have you heard what they've said about that?
No, what did they say? I've heard a couple of people on about it, but yeah. Vaguely, I know vaguely. What did he say?
So they were talking about tackles.
Yeah.
And Crouchy said, there's one that still annoys me, and it was Paul Devlin in 2002, and he put one on me. And Chris Stark's the Radio 1 guy, and he went, he's a nutter, that Paul Devlin.
But hang on a minute, I'm 5'8". Peter Crouch is 6'7". He's moaning about me kicking him. I remember it. It's funny because I do remember it. It was Sheffield, and he was like prancing around in the corner, like trying to waste time. So I had about a 10 or 20 yard run up, and I thought, you're going here, and I just took the lot. Absolutely took. I don't know whether I got booked. I know I never got sent off, but it was a bit tasty, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, they laughed it off anyway. I don't think there's any hard feelings.
Good.
I suppose, playing under Warnock, you're expected to make them challenges, aren't you, I suppose?
Yeah, well, that was always, although I was, probably played 80% of my career as a winger. And, wingers historically are not renowned for liking the physical part of the game. I think, of course, I came through non-league, and then obviously my first manager as a pro was Warnock, and then I played for him again, at Sheffield. I was always, I always had that aggressive sort of nature anyway. So it was actually a part of the game that I quite enjoyed. And, I remember especially the first time, I made my debut in '92 for Notts County in the old First Division, which is now the Premier League. Defenders were allowed one or two outrageous tackles on you before the ref would even think about booking them. Then it was almost like, the first one's free, don't do that again. So, more so the first half of my career, as a forward player or winger or whatever, you'd get lumps kicked out of you, but I always liked dishing it out back as well. And, probably, I don't know, I think I got sent off 7 or 8 times in my career, and I don't know how many yellow cards. So I probably took it a little bit too far at times. And then I realised when I was adding up the amount of money I was paying in fines, it was a month time getting sent off.
You were in a deficit, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine it now, though. You get sent off for anything now, didn't you? It would be crazy.
Yeah, well, I remember when I first started going down the Blues in the early 80s, and the team then was the likes of Noel Blake, Robert Hopkins, Tony Colton, Mick Harford, Worthington. Really, really good footballers, but every one of them could dish it out. I know a lot of them lads now, which is great for me as a Blues fan, meeting some of my heroes. And I think sometimes unfairly, that sort of team in the early 80s gets tarnished a bit as, they were just a physical team. Every one of those players, and Dave Lang and Mark Dennis, the ones that I just didn't mention then, and any of the others that I forgot, Kev Broadhurst, they could all dig a little bit, but they were all really, really good players. That's the team that always sticks out in my mind as a young kid watching the Blues. And, I took little bits away from Frank Worthington, absolutely fantastic player. And, I couldn't wish to be anywhere near as good as him. But I looked at the likes of 2 great fullbacks, Mark Dennis and Dave Lang, and then you look at Mick Harford. And I think you try and emulate them. So I think the aggression side of it comes through from watching players like that. Then obviously what you're naturally good at also comes through as well.
Yeah, I think it's the passion as well, isn't it? It's just there, especially like a club like Blues, where we kind of pride ourselves on, the fans love it. A tackle goes in, it's almost like you've scored a goal. The fans just love it, don't they?
Yeah, I think not just Blues fans. I think most football fans. I've followed Celtic all my life as well, because my dad and that side of the family are from Glasgow, and so obviously Celtic and Blues. I know a lot about them, and I think not just them fans, but any fans in general will forgive you for having a shit game or playing crap, as long as you're trying your best. I think when fans think that you're not giving it all, that's when you're in trouble. If you're a trier and you give what you've got, even if it's not good enough, fans will go with you 99.9% of the time, I think.
Bang on. How do you reflect on your time at Blues, Paul? Obviously, you had 2 stints there. Segued in between like a Sheffield United stint. I think we mentioned before the call, didn't we, Barry Fry? How did that shape your career? You know, I think you speak quite highly of Barry Fry, don't you?
Yeah, well, you know, everything in my career came quite late. You know, I didn't think I was ever going to be a professional footballer. I had no sort of intentions on being a professional footballer. I wanted to be a chef when I left school, so I trained, you know, in a hotel and getting my catering qualifications, and then sort of drifted back into Sunday football. And you know, I got noticed by a better Sunday team. Then I went to non-league and sort of climbed the non-league ladder. Then obviously in '92 signed for Neil Warnock. I had 4 great years there, and then obviously the team that I'd watched predominantly as a boy, Blues, had just signed Michael Johnson, who's one of my, you know, to this day is one of my best pals. And he rang me and he says, "Listen, Baz is really interested in taking you to Blues." You know, I'd had 4 years at Notts County. I think I'd only been a year into a new contract. So as soon as I heard that, yeah, brilliant. And I ended up going there in a joint deal with Andy Legg, another really, really, you know, top friend of mine. But it was brilliant because all of a sudden I'm playing on the pitch at St Andrews in front of the Tilton, and you know, 10, 11 years before I'm sitting there watching players, or you know, something like that. You know, 10, 12 years before. So to get the chance to play for Blues and to put that shirt on, to score in front of the Tilton was was a dream come true, and I couldn't have had a better start really. I think I got about 18-15 or 18-16 when I first went there under Baz, and then unfortunately Baz left after the end of that season. So Trevor came in, and I was in Trevor's first season. I was top goal scorer and player of the year. So I had a really, really good start to my Blues career, and it was fantastic. It was a dream for me.
Was Barry like one of them blokes that kind of looks after you as well, arm around the shoulder? Was it a bit of tough love?
Well, a bit of both with Baz. That's what made him so good and so likeable. You know, he'll throw his hands up and tell you he's not the greatest coach. I can't remember him doing any coaching really. It was Edwin Steen and David Ells that did all the coaching and the training side of it. But where Baz was brilliant, he was a motivator and he was a man manager. He knew the players that he'd have to give a kick up the arse to. He knew the players that he'd have to put his arm around. And the good thing about Baz as well, you could have the most stand-up, blaring row with Baz after a game, to the point where you'd be nearly punching each other. And then you go in the bar after and it's forgotten about, and he'd never hold a grudge. You could say what you want, he'd say what, and get out in the air, and he'd never hold a grudge again. You could call him fat this and whatever, and it wouldn't make any difference next week. Whereas with some managers, if you was to rear up on them, you think, oh no, I'm not playing. Oh no, I'm not playing next week. And Baz was never like that, and that's what made him so good. And you know, in fairness, as a supporter from the outside looking in before I went to Blues, you know, we were really in the doldrums, and then obviously Karen Brady, David Sullivan, David Gold, and Baz come in, and they ignited the spark at the club again, and they got the club going really, you know, and we've got to give them full credit for that.
I think when Trevor Francis came in, didn't he, after Barry Fry, but it didn't, even though I think you came off being the top scorer for Blues at that time, but it didn't fancy you, did it, for some reason?
No, I always got that impression, you know, from day one, even though I'd done really well for him, and I wasn't one of his signings. Now, every player will tell you when new managers come in, predominantly they want to bring their own signings in. I think there was only sort of me and Martin Granger and maybe a few others, Jono, and that lasted sort of pre that era, but he did end up getting rid of most really. But I thought, of course, I'd done so well. Obviously, him being our best ever player, you know, he's got any down the Blues, so I wanted to really impress him, and I wanted him to love me. You know, I wanted to love him, but we just didn't get on. We just, you know, didn't get on. I don't ever really think he fancied me as a player. You know, I didn't fancy him as a manager really. And it ended up in, you know, I think in his second season, I'd scored sort of 18, 12, 18, 13. Left me out from then onwards, and I was in and out of the team. He brought me on a sub one day and brought me off in the same game, which every pro will tell you is like the sort of the biggest sort you can have, really. And we just never got on. You know, I've seen him since. I've seen him a couple of times in the last couple of years, and we've spoke. But you know, those things happened in football. It was a heartbreaker for me because when I left, I was portrayed as being very greedy, and I wanted this and I wanted that, and you know, there was nothing further from the truth. But it was one of those things, and I ended up going to Sheffield United, really similar club to Blue. Love my time there. Actually played more games for Sheffield than any other team in my career. So I had 4 brilliant years there and absolutely loved it. Made some lifelong friends that I still speak to this day. I still go back up to Bramall Lane now and again. Good pals with Chris Wilder. I played with Chris at Notts County and Sheffield. So I had 4 great years there. And, then obviously culminated in me getting the chance to come back on the City Blues.
Yeah.
What do you reckon in terms of Chris Wilder? I mean, because they idolise him, don't they, up at Sheffield? Do you reckon he's got a job for life there as much as he wants it?
In my opinion, he should have, definitely. When they were 11th in Division 1 when he took over. So in my opinion, as long as they're above 11th in Division 1, he should have that job for as long as he likes. I mean, last season, I think there were people betting on him, weren't they, to go down with the record least points tally and everything. Obviously, had a fantastic season. It was always going to be difficult for them the second season. You got the second season syndrome. You're not that sort of new team. Teams have, when you play teams that first season, they don't know how you play. You're a bit of an unknown quantity. Obviously, they haven't had that this season. He's made a couple of, for Sheffield, big money signings. Brewster and that, who haven't really caught fire and got the goals that they need. But, he's a young kid. He's got time. But now he's, like I say, I know Chris well, played with him and, real good lad. He is a truly mad Sheffield United fan. He's supported them, he's played for them, he's managed them, he's lived the dream. So to me, definitely 100% do what the likes of Burnley did with Sean Dyche, what Bournemouth did with Eddie Howe. Yeah, more than likely they're going to go down unless there's a miracle. Give him that chance to bring them back up. I mean, you'd think looking at the squad that they'd be strong if they do go down this season. I'm saying if because you look what Chris Wilder's done the last few years. You can't write the bloke off. But no, to me, he should have a job there until they're lower than 11th in Division 1. Because that's where they were when he took them over.
Yeah, you can't argue with that, really. And, I don't think you can question his job because, I mean, I'm going to use Albion for an example. The kind of sack Slaven Bilic, and then they get Big Sam in. And if they go down anyway, you've got to get another manager in. And Chris Wilder, like you say, he is the guy for that job. And if they do go down this season, I won't be surprised if they come straight back up.
Yeah, I think so. And I think sometimes you've got to be careful what you wish for, It's all right saying, we'll get the new manager to go to that next level and do that. But, for most clubs, what is the next level? Getting to the Premier League, staying in the Premier League for most Championship and Premier League clubs is the holy grail, isn't it? You've only got your sort of 5 or 6 clubs realistically that are going to be in with a chance of winning things, So holy grail is getting there, even better staying there. Sheffield now have had a couple of years in there. They'll come down in a far, far stronger financial position than what they were when he took over, which will enable them to have a better chance at bouncing back up. That's why, I speak to a lot of Blues fans about our position at the moment. I can't believe some of them would say, well, we're better off going down and bounce back up. It doesn't work like that. I'd rather stop up 4th from bottom on goal difference than go down. I'd never wish to go down on any club because you look at the likes of Bolton, you look at the likes of Sunderland, teams like that, they haven't bounced back. I said a perfect example earlier on, and I know Blues are a far, far bigger club, but when I signed for Notts County, it was the top division, and they're non-league now, and they were the oldest football league club in the world. So nobody's immune to relegation, and I just don't want us to get on that slippery slope.
Yeah. Look at Portsmouth as well, haven't you?
You look in recent years, Portsmouth, Coventry,
we're going to doing it now as well.
Teams like that. Nobody's got a divine right to drop back down and then go, why all of a sudden if we drop down to Division 1 are we going to be brilliant and win every week?
Yeah.
I would never be that arrogant enough to think that we've got a team that will drop down to Division 1, win every game and come back at first chance. Because I don't think it works like that. Especially what?
Blues.
Well, yeah, I mean,
just don't do that, do we?
If you're a Blues fan, anything can happen, can't it?
Yeah. Going back to Sheffield United, that was under Warnock, was it, when you played?
No, Steve Thompson signed me. Steve and Colin Murphy were actually the managers that sold me from Notts County to Blues. And I got on great with Tomo. So Steve Thompson brought me back. And I mean, it was a spell after they'd had Howard Kendall for a number of years and they'd threw a lot of money at the club. I mean, my first day training there, Ian Rush was there, Paul McGrath was there, Michael Vonk was there, Graham Stewart, Dean Saunders, a lot of big name players. And they just missed out on getting to the Premier League for a year or two under Howard Kendall. And it got to the stage where they had no more money, basically. So they had to get rid of all the big name, high-earning players and completely rebuild. And unfortunately for Tomo, although he did get us to the playoffs that year, we lost, a really good Sunderland team that had Kevin Phillips and Noel Quinn. But he had to dismantle that team, and he had no money to bring players in. So Tomo went, and we had a few managers after that. Brucey come in as player manager. Adrian Heath was there for a little bit, Russell Slade. And then obviously Neil Warnock came back in again and had a few good years of success and managed to get them up as well. So, I love my time at Sheffield. Really similar club to Blues.
Under Warnock, was it like, what was the dressing room like? Was it like full of like tough characters like yourself?
Yeah, he was a bit like Baz in that way. Not the greatest coach in the world, but brilliant motivator. Used to sort of forge this siege mentality. Well, they all like me on the telly. They all like us. Nobody likes us. Nobody likes a Warnock team. We'll show them. We'll do this. So he was very, very good at that. And he was a wily old cat, Neil. I mean, you looking at. I think he's probably the most promoted manager. Definitely now, if not ever. So he knows his stuff. He has a way of playing. He's got his own ways with training. He was brilliant with the older lads, myself, David Kelly, Paul Pesky-Salido, and people like that. We were all probably hitting 30 or over 30. Great with time off, have a day off, and you do well, and he looks after you. Mess him around, and he's your worst nightmare. But I loved him though. He gave me my chance as a 19-year-old. And in 2000, I won Player of the Year for Sheffield United when Neil was manager. So I played some of my best football under Neil, and I'll always be grateful to him for giving me a chance. As a raw 19-year-old kid playing Saturday football, non-league.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chick, go
on, Sam. You go.
You see him do the air dryer treatment. It's all over Twitter, isn't it? Was that every game, or was that select games?
No, let me tell you, he was far, far calmer when I played for him at Sheffield United, which was 8 or 9 years after I played for him at Notts County. Notts County was far more volatile. And yeah, he would, if you'd done something wrong or you hadn't done what he'd asked you, and he thinks you'd let him down and the fans down, he would let you know in no uncertain terms. I don't know whether he still manages like that now. I mean, I would imagine it would be difficult for Neil to change his ways, but I don't think with the modern day player, I think they're a little bit more fragile now than they were a few years ago. So whether he sort of curtailed that, but no, you knew. And when he was on one of those rants, what you didn't want to do was make eye contact with him. You make eye contact with him and you're getting it. But yeah, but on the flip side of that, if you did well for him, you couldn't wish for a better bloke.
Did he ever come out on the Lash review and stuff? Was he involved with the players?
Yeah,
players manager.
He used to take us out. We used to go to Scarborough because that's, he managed in Scarborough. I think he had a place there. And he actually lives in Cornwall. So we'd go away and he'd come out. He'd have 1 or 2 beers with us and he'd slope off and do his thing, But yeah, he was all for that. He didn't mind the lads. In fact, he liked it, the lads going out having a beer, that team bonding, that team spirit. He was all for that, Neil. I remember the one time he took us 10-pin bowling in Scarborough. So we're all on the Lash all day, and he's like rocked up. Right, lads, so we're having a crap. We're all half cut, haven't we, by this time? So he's gone, anyone want to play me for 20 quid? Yeah, go on then. So then he's gone like, to his car and got out his bag. He was like someone out of Kingpin. He's got like the 2 balls, the glove and everything. He's spinning the ball around again, and he's like took us, we're all pissed as well. So he's took us all to the cleaners, and he got these 10-pin bowling. I reckon he's a better 10-pin bowler than he was manager, but no, he was brilliant. And then we go down. He's got a lovely big place down in Cornwall. So we train hard. You'd train really hard under Neil, and he'd run you, you'd be fit. But then he'd go, right, lads, 2 days off, get yourselves out today. So he'd invite us back. In his garden, he had his garden, he had fields down in Cornwall. He had like a little pitch and pot thing. He had a fishing lake. So he'd have all the lads back there. You'd do a bit of fishing, big barbecue, loads of beer, all on the team bus. And, so he was brilliant with things like that. And that was one of the parts that made him such a good manager, because he'd build that team spirit, and he's done that everywhere he's been.
Yeah, he kind of just, he seems to earn the respect of his players, doesn't he, by doing that? You work hard for me, and I'll treat you.
Yeah, he was. You knew if you'd won if you win on the Saturday, you know, more than likely chance. If you've not got another game till next Saturday, we've got a chance of 2 days off in the week. Yeah. If you was crap and you didn't win on a Saturday, it's like we're training every day. It was like the carrot and the stick. Carrot and the stick. You know, you do well, he's going to look after you. If you don't do well, he's not going to look after you. But what I like with Neil as well, he'd let you know where you stand. He wouldn't be like a lot of managers that try and tell you what you want to hear or wouldn't want any confrontation. He'd tell you straight. And if you didn't like it, it'd be okay, then off you go. Don't like it, it's my way or the highway. So he was great like that. I'd much rather have a manager who's going to tell me exactly what he thinks straight to my face than a manager that's going to like not say anything and let it fester and just leave me out the team and not tell me why I'm left out. It's what have I done. So he was brilliant, you know. He was straight as an arrow, and you know, lots of people hated him and that. But I think if you speak to 100 players that played for him for any length of time, I think you'll find vast majority got on with him and liked him. You're going to get the ones that hated him because if he went into a club and he didn't fancy him, he didn't like you. You know, that was it. You were having a bad time. But, you know, I was fortunate. I had a couple of spells and I got on well with him and did well for him.
Yeah. Going back to your time at Blues, after Sheffield United re-signed, I think it was a loan first, was he?
Yeah.
And then he signed permanently. Was it the day before the playoff final?
Yeah, it was something like that. I remember I'd come in on loan because what happened, Steve Bruce wanted me to go to Crystal Palace. And I'd only just signed a 4-year contract at Sheffield United. I was only like 6 months into it. And Bruce, because, you know, I got on great with Bruce. I played with him, played under him at Sheffield, and then obviously wanted me to go down there. So I put a transfer. I handled it completely the wrong way, the move from Sheffield. That's my biggest regret in football is the way I handled leaving Sheffield United, because the fans and the club deserved better, really. But I had my head turned. So I was going to go to Palace. Then he leaves the Palace job. He's going to Blues. Will you come back to Blues? I'm like, yeah, definitely. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He gets put on gardening leave. So the whole thing is like up in the air. Warnock was brilliant with me. Didn't cast me out or nothing. He just said, listen, Dev, I know your head's not right. Train at home for a bit. You know, if it all goes through, we'll sort it. If it don't, it don't. So for a week or two, I trained at home. Then he's rang me. He's gone, it's all off. It's not happening. So I'm ringing Michael Johnson. I'm going, Jono, speak to Brucey. What's happening? He said, I've put a transfer request in there and he's left me roasting. He's left me out in the cold. And Dev, I spoke to him. They've got too many round about the 30 mark, 31. He's got to get some younger players in. So I'm like that. And I burnt my bridges or nearly burnt my bridges at Sheffield. And I'm not going back to Blues. So Warnock's rang me. Brilliant. Good as gold. Said, Dev, it's all off. Get back up training. You're playing Saturday. And I'll never forget, it was Norwich away. He put me straight back in the team, Warnock, Norwich away, which was fantastic. That's how he handled people. So I played at Norwich. We're coming back from Norwich to Sheffield on the coach. He calls me to the front of the coach. He says, take your boots, let me go off. You're going to Blues. Well, bloody hell. So something had happened and it all come back on. But what I did there, Blues were having a bad run. And because I think David Sullivan had mentioned to Brucey or vice versa about the squad being a little bit old. He knew there was interest in me coming back. And I did hear that it was David Sullivan went, no, let's get him back. He said to Brucey, no, I want him back. And Brucey was happy, obviously, because he wanted me, but he was a bit worried about bringing another 30-year-old down. And it all sort of happened. I went back on loan. I think I did 2 or 3 months on loan. Whatever the maximum you can do on loan is, I did. And my last game was Wolves at home, the 2-2 game, and I scored in that game. And it was, I might not have gone to the playoff final because if I didn't agree and Sheffield didn't agree and Blues didn't agree, I wouldn't have played in the playoff final. And it was done the day before. Yeah, it was all done the day before, I think.
Yeah, that's lucky. You scored a penalty as well, didn't you, in the playoff final?
Yeah, I mean, we practiced them. Brucey had us practicing, oh God, for however many weeks leading up to the playoff final. The same 5 lads. Obviously, usually didn't get the chance to take his. So I knew we had some. I mean, I'd always took penalties anyway. So, you know, I'm saying it wouldn't bother me. Let me tell you, the goal looks about that big. The people looks about that big. You know, and you got 75,000 people and hundreds of million watching, and the game's worth 150 million. So I knew we had good penalty takers, and then obviously with Daz being so young, and you know, it's folklore, isn't it? Darren Carter for the Premiership, and then he scores the goal. So I did fancy us as much as you can fancy someone in the penalties. I did fancy us in the shoot, and obviously it was in front of our lot as well, which was great.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Darren Carter. What was said when I think he was 18 at the time, weren't it? And from what I remember, because I was young, I was really young then, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I don't think he was in the team that much from what I can remember at the time. So when he offered to take a penalty, what was everyone's reaction?
Well, no, he just broke into the team, so he wasn't a regular by any stretch of the imagination. He was only 18 at the end of the day, but he was down as one of the penalty takers. So we knew he was taking one. And the thing about it is, I mean, looking back on my own experience taking it, that walk from the halfway line to the penalty spot seems to take about 4 hours. And I had cramp in both my calves. Whenever I took a penalty, I always had quite a long run up, and I had to shorten my run up because I knew if I had 1 or 2 more steps, both my calves were going to cramp up. And it was just the most I say to people, it's the worst and the best experience of my life taking that penalty, because you're terrified, and all that's going through your head, if I miss and we don't go up, everyone forever is going to remember the Blues fan, the Birmingham kid that missed the penalty to get them up. So that's all you're thinking. And when it scored, I mean, you see my face, I could have cried. I was just relieved. But I think that's being so young. I think it was actually a bonus, because it didn't really dawn on him how big the occasion was, that we'd been 16 years out the top flight. The game was worth 150 million quid. There was hundreds of million watching around the world. So I think it all went over his head, because he was only a young kid, and he took a fantastic penalty. But the pressure I always laugh at people when they say pros shouldn't miss a penalty. You put yourself in front of a full stadium and take a penalty, and you got to be mentally strong to step up and take a penalty. And I'd never, unless they do one of these crazy daft run-ups when they deserve to miss, I would never knock anyone for missing a pen.
When you're going to take a penalty, that situation, do you know where you're going to put it, like, all the time? Would you ever change what you're going to do?
I was always of the opinion, if I hit it hard, right foot, it always went naturally to my left, or the keeper's right. So I used to concentrate on hitting it as hard as I can. Sometimes it wouldn't go in the corner, sometimes it'd go over, because my thinking was, if you try and send him the wrong way and side foot it, if he saves it, he's got a chance of holding it. If I blast it as hard as I can, there ain't no way he's holding it, so I'm going to have a chance of a rebound. So I always used to, most of the time, blast it as hard as I can on my natural side, which was right to left. The only time I ever changed it, and I only done it once, and it was against Blues. I scored for Sheffield United at Bramall Lane. Ian Bennett was in goal, and obviously played with Benno for years. He knew where I took the penalties, so I'm thinking, bloody hell, I can't do this. Benno knows. And I side-footed it, which was the only one in 15 years playing. I side-footed it to the keeper's left, and it went in, luckily enough. But I always just used to, hitting them hard on target was always my first thought, rather than placing them or sending the keeper.
Did you get allowed a stick for that penalty off the Blues fans?
Yeah, I got more stick for scoring on a Boxing Day game in front of the Tilton at St Andrews. We won 2-0 Sheffield. I scored a header as well from about 12 yards out. Yeah. So the stick I got that day was, I think that was either my first or second game back at St Andrews after leaving. And I had the whole of St Andrews singing, "There's only one greedy so-and-so, and Devlin is this and Devlin is that." And we won 2-0, so that was an eventful day.
Yeah. The playoff final, did you go out after? And if you did, it must have been some night out.
Did we go out after? We was out for about 3 or 4 days, constantly. The civic reception, we were steaming drunk. The open top bus, we was drunk for about 3 days. It was brilliant. I remember after the game, we got back to where we were stopping. And obviously David Sullivan, Gold, ex-players were there, Karen, who else was there? Just everyone you can imagine was there. So it was great. And then we've gone back to Birmingham. They opened up the bars in St Andrews. We were in there. Then we had the open top bus for civic reception back to St Andrews. And I remember being with Steve Bruce in one of the bars, and after about 3 days solid, and he was just that tired. He went, "Oh, I can't do another day. Get yourselves home," and all that. So it was brilliant. We did celebrate. We had some lads that liked to celebrate in that team, if I can put it politely.
Yeah. Any names?
Yeah, me. To be fair, we all Jeff Horsfield, who's a big pal of mine, even now he only lives up the road, and we all went out. We all like to drink. We all we all played hard and we all trained hard. And I think the achievement of doing that after having 16, 17 years at the top flight, I don't think anyone would have begrudged us a couple of days on the beer.
Not at all. Moving on to Watford then. Is it true about Elton John? Is that true?
Yeah, well, it was strange because I nearly signed for Watford from Notts County before I went to Blues. I went down with, I actually met Glenn Roder, who was the manager, Eric Hall was an agent, in Terry Venables' club in the West End. So I'm sitting there one Sunday afternoon, nearly signing for Watford with Terry Venables singing on karaoke. But that was before I come to Blues. But yeah, I had a phone. Well, I spoke to Brucey. And like I say, I got on great with Brucey. I had 2 years left on my contract at Blues. But at that time, it started to bring a lot of players in. And I was in and out. I wasn't playing regular. And he said to me, Dev, I want you to stay, but you're not going to play every week. Well, to me, football's about playing. So as soon as he said that to me, I went, no, that's fine. I'll get on my bike. Because I wanted to look back when I'm my age now, 48, 49, and say, right, I played 500, 600, 700 games. I scored me 100 goals. I don't want to look back and say, well, I spent 3 years on the bench and I was 100 sub appearances. So I said, yeah, I'll leave then. And I was in the Scotland squad at the time. The only thing that annoyed me, I could have gone to West Ham, and they were in the Championship at the time under Alan. Trevor Brooking had taken over as interim manager. It was before Pardew was going to come in. So they wanted to sign me on loan. And he said, Pardew, because Alan Pardew had tried to sign me for Reading down the years. He said, as soon as he gets a job, he'll take you permanent. But Karen wouldn't let me go on loan. She said, no, if you're going to go, it's got to be a permanent or not. So that fell through, and it would have been a miles bigger contract. And they actually got promoted that year, West Ham. So I ended up speaking to Ray Lewinson, and he explained to me, he says, listen, they were struggling. They were down the wrong end of the table because it was a bit similar to Sheffield, really. Gianluca Vialli had been in there for a couple of years, spent loads and loads of money on bringing in players on massive contracts, didn't quite get to the Premier League. So then he's gone. The club are left with all these players on mega money. And again, they had to clean the decks, get players in and hopefully survive. So he said Elton John's agreed with me. Nothing to do with the club because the club couldn't afford it. He'll fund one player, the transfer fee and the contract. And that was me. That was me. And I remember went to his concert. He'd done a concert at Vicarage Road. And he gave me a mention on stage. And he's singing whatever. And he's turned around and he's going, yeah, I love Watford and that. And I've had Paul Devlin. And so you can imagine I'm sat there. All the lads were all sat around. As soon as he's mentioned my name, they've all turned around. They're all taking the mick out of me, as you can imagine. But yeah, I mean, what I will say, never met him, never spoke to him or anything, but he funded the whole thing. And he is a true Watford fan. Down the years, he's put his money where his mouth is. He's put money into the club. He's been chairman for the stint. If ever we were playing away, you'd be on the coach. Ray Lewington's phone would go about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and he'd be talking through the game. When he's talking about players, Ray Lewington would go, he knows who the player is, he knows where he plays, he knows what his strengths are. So he's not one of these sort of fashionable Watford fans. He's a proper Watford fan. And it was brilliant for me to get, it was great down at Watford. They didn't see the best version of me down there because I was past it really. But I had 3 good years down there. Great club, lovely club. And all thanks to Elton.
Fantastic.
Right, we'll end part 1 there. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, and join us for part 2 shortly.